In the summer of 2025, Lewis Hamilton sat down with Toto Wolff, the man who had been his team principal for over a decade, and told him he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. That conversation sent shockwaves through the entire sport, because nobody replaces Lewis Hamilton. 7 world championships, 103 race wins, the greatest driver in the history of Formula One. So who on earth do you give that seat to? An 18-year-old kid from Bologna who had never started a Formula One race in his life. And now, just over a year later, that same kid has broken Hamilton's records, stolen his throne, and at just 19 years old is leading the Formula One World Championship. This is the story of Kimi Antonelli, the most extraordinary rise in the history of motorsport. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will not be able to stop talking about this kid. Because this is not just a Formula One story. This is a story about destiny. About a boy born 40 kilometers from the Ferrari factory, in the heart of Italy's Motor Valley, who was always going to end up here. Stick with me. This one is special.
Bologna, Italy. August 25th, 2006. While Formula One was racing at the Turkish Grand Prix, won that day by Felipe Massa, a baby boy was born in a city surrounded by the greatest car brands in the world. Ferrari, 40 kilometers to the south. Lamborghini, 30 kilometers away. Ducati, right there in the city. His father, Marco Antonelli, was a racing driver himself, a man who had spent his entire life around engines, circuits, and the smell of burning rubber. And from the moment he held his son in his arms, he already had plans. When Kimi was just 2 years old, Marco put him in a go-kart. He was so small, his feet did not reach the pedals. His dad had to hold them down for him. 2 years old, barely walking, already behind the wheel. By the age of 7, he was competing and winning. Marco made him one deal that became the rule of the household. Either you do well at school, or you do not. Not a suggestion, a deal. Young Kimi held up his end every single week. And by the time he was 8 years old, he had won his first karting title. In a field of 55 competitors, he took pole position and won the final by almost 7 seconds.
Mercedes joined the Kimi Antonelli story in 2019. He was 12 years old. And what followed over the next 5 years was one of the most systematic, focused, and relentless development programs any young driver has ever gone through. Mercedes did not just sponsor him. They built him. 2020, FIA Karting European Championship. Won it, age 13. 2021, European Championship again, back-to-back, aged 14. 2022, Italian Formula 4 Championship. Won it. ADAC Formula 4 Championship. Won it. 22 victories from 35 starts across both series. 2023, Formula Regional European Championship. Won it. Formula Regional Middle East Championship. Won it. 4 titles, 2 seasons. Now, at this point, most people would expect a reality check. Young kid gets the big seat, makes some mistakes, takes a year to find his feet, pays his dues. Not this one. Melbourne, his very first Formula One Grand Prix. Starting from the back of the grid after a technical issue in qualifying, Antonelli drives through the entire field and finishes 4th. He becomes the second youngest driver in history to score an F1 championship point. Japan, 2025. Antonelli becomes the youngest driver in Formula One history to lead a lap and set the fastest lap of the race on the same day. 2 records in one afternoon. Canada, 2025. 3rd place on the podium. 3rd youngest driver in history to stand on an F1 podium. By the end of his rookie season, he had scored 150 championship points, a new record, the highest scoring rookie in Formula One history. In 75 years of the sport,
No driver in their first season had ever scored more points. And then 2026 arrived, and Kimi Antonelli decided that records were not enough anymore. Shanghai, China, March 2026. Qualifying. Antonelli puts the Mercedes on pole position and becomes the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history, at 19 years, 6 months, and 17 days old. He takes the record from Sebastian Vettel and beats it by nearly 2 full years. Then the race. Antonelli leads from start to finish and crosses the line as the second youngest Grand Prix winner in Formula One history, behind only Max Verstappen. In doing so, he becomes the first Italian Grand Prix winner in 20 years. The last Italian to win a Formula One race was Giancarlo Fisichella in 2006. Kimi Antonelli was not yet born when that happened. One race later, Japan, Suzuka. Antonelli wins again and becomes the youngest driver in the entire history of Formula One to lead the World Championship standings. He beats the record that had belonged to Lewis Hamilton, the man whose seat he took. Hamilton first led the championship at 22 years old. Antonelli did it at 19. It is not close. And here is the detail that will stick with you. After winning in Japan, standing on the podium at Suzuka, confetti in the air, they brought out the champagne. And Kimi Antonelli could not drink it, because he is 19, still legally too young for alcohol. He told reporters afterward, with a grin, it was very tricky, but yeah, it was a non-alcoholic beverage. The youngest championship leader in Formula One history, drinking sparkling grape juice on the podium because he is not old enough for champagne yet. You genuinely cannot make this story up.
Now, let us talk about the elephant in the room, because this story cannot be told without talking about Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton left Mercedes for Ferrari for 2025. He said he wanted a new challenge, a new chapter. And at Ferrari, the team he had dreamed of driving for his entire career, he would write the final act of the greatest story in Formula One history. And then, a teenager turned up at Mercedes and started breaking every record Hamilton ever set. Think about what that must feel like. You spent 6 years at Mercedes winning world championships. You leave. 18 months later, the kid who replaced you is leading the championship you built, in the car you developed, with the team you helped shape. Lewis Hamilton is currently 4th in the 2026 standings, behind his own replacement. Now, to be clear, this is not a knock on Lewis Hamilton. He is still one of the finest drivers on the grid. His legacy is untouchable. 7 world championships, 103 wins. No one in this generation will come close to what Hamilton achieved. But here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the paddock wants to say out loud. Hamilton left Mercedes, and Mercedes got better. And Antonelli himself has handled that comparison with extraordinary grace for a 19-year-old. When asked about replacing Hamilton, he said,
So here we are, May 2026, the Miami Grand Prix weekend. A 19-year-old boy from Bologna, a city 40 kilometers from the Ferrari factory, sits at the top of the Formula One World Championship, 9 points clear of his own teammate, ahead of Verstappen, ahead of Norris, ahead of Hamilton. Could he become the first ever teenage world champion in Formula One history? Sebastian Vettel won his first title at 23, Max Verstappen at 23. Those were the youngest ever. Antonelli is 19. The season is 4 races old. The mathematics are there. The car is there. The talent is undeniable. His father Marco, the man who put him in a kart at 2 years old, who made the deal about school and karting, who drove him to circuits across Europe every single weekend, is watching all of this from the paddock. What does that man feel watching his son break records that Lewis Hamilton set? Formula One gets a new generational talent every decade or so. In the 90s, it was Schumacher. In the 2000s, it was Alonso and then Vettel. In the 2010s, it was Hamilton at his peak, and then Verstappen arriving like a force of nature. And right now, in 2026, Formula One has its next one. A 19-year-old boy who first sat in a kart at the age of 2, who could not reach the pedals, who made a deal with his father to always do his homework, who grew up in the shadow of Ferrari but chose the silver arrows, who was handed the most famous seat in Formula One at 18 years old, and instead of getting crushed by the weight of it, used it as a launch pad. He took Hamilton's seat, he broke Hamilton's records, and now, race by race, podium by podium, he is building a legacy that one day might stand alongside Hamilton's own. Kimi Antonelli, 19 years old, just getting started. That is the story of Formula One's most extraordinary young talent, and we are, right now, this very season, watching the very beginning of it. If this gave you goosebumps, hit subscribe. We cover Formula One like nobody else does. Drop a comment below. Can Antonelli become the youngest Formula One world champion in history? I want to know what you think. I will see you in the next one.